Greetings, members of the 14th state, fellow Zimbabweans, fellow Africans. Welcome to our weekly press briefing from the Citizens Coalition for Change. Zimbabwe is in a constitutional crisis, a crisis that is stemming out of a sham, fraudulent, discredited election of the August 23rd. The continuation of the sham election has been seen by the following signs: the continued victimization of members of the alternative, particularly in the countryside, violence, arbitrary arrests, abuse of our members of parliament, councillors, and all public deployees and members of the citizens' movement. The escalation of this gross violation of human rights is born out of the contested election of the 23rd. Just this week, we witnessed several cases of our members appearing on various concocted charges and flimsy charges. You know that our Honorable Member of Parliament, Honorable Sakandira, has been in prison, just been given bail, and 5 of our champions, and also our Honorable Member of the 9th Parliament, Honorable Job Scala, continues to be in prison. Today is 491 days in remand prison without trial. The clear arbitrary arrest and clear abuse of the criminal justice system in our country continues to be a weapon against alternative voices in our country. We have continued as CCC and as an alternative to reiterate our position without any equivocation that Zimbabwe must be able to come up with a solution to resolve this crisis, a solution that takes us back into a credible election, an election that is able to produce a credible and acceptable outcome by all Zimbabweans. We continue to reiterate without doubt and confusion that there is a clear roadmap that must be taken by Zimbabweans across the political divide to make sure that we dialogue and have a political settlement to resolve the crisis in our country. I want to speak about the issue that is before us today. You know that a few weeks ago, an imposter recalled members of parliament belonging to the Citizens Coalition for Change. And I want to emphasize and put it very clear that CCC has not recalled any member of parliament or councillor in respect of the just ended sham election in our country. Number 2, we want to also re-emphasize that our movement, the Citizens Coalition for Change, as led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa, has no such a designation and an office of an individual, an imposter by ZANU-PF, who has been in the forefront of writing to the Speaker of Parliament, recalling our members of Parliament, and to the local government, recalling our councillor. Thirdly, we want to put it very clear that the Speaker of Parliament acted on error, acted on a letter that did not represent the CCC as was founded on the 24th of January 2022. Now, many people have asked us as a movement, why is this happening? Why is this tortoise on a lamppost been given all the powers to recall our members of parliament? The reason is very simple. Number 1, there is a deliberate attempt in this country to force a 2/3 majority by ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF wants to get a 2/3 majority by hook or crook. That's why you have seen them systematically deploying its proxy and an imposter to go and try and destabilize our members of parliament. Secondly, the intentions of ZANU-PF are very clear, and their hand in all this is very clear. They try to make sure that ZANU-PF wants to create an opposition that it leads itself. We have rejected as a movement, we have rejected as CCC the attempt to be co-opted into joining the gravy train because of trinkets and trappings of dictatorship. That's why Triple C is being punished for defeating Mr. Mnangagwa, for defeating ZANU-PF in the watershed election. That's why you see the systematic attack on our movement. It is clear for all who care that ZANU-PF wants to make sure that Triple C does not have access to the political finance funds that is entitled after winning more 104 seats in parliament in a flawed process, winning a presidential election in a flawed process, and more importantly, sweeping 33 out of 34 seats in local authorities in this country. ZANU-PF has also advanced this crisis that they've created in their minds, sent to the Speaker of Parliament to ensure that the Triple C, as an alternative that emerged victorious in the election, is diverted, and Zimbabweans themselves are diverted from the key national question in this country. What is the national question? The question is very clear in this country, that the election on the 23rd was flawed, that ZANU-PF, as its current composition, has no mandate from the people, because government is born out of an election, and an election that is free, fair, and credible. Lastly, ZANU-PF has been doing all these shenanigans as an attempt to try and weaken, as an attempt to try and embarrass the alternative, because we used our freedom to protest by not attending the official opening of Parliament, which was addressed by Mr. Mnangagwa. Now, how do we exit this crisis? The big question is, what has Triple C done to ensure that we resolve the question facing our movement and our society? Firstly, we have made it very clear. We mandated, as the Citizen National Assembly, we made a resolution in our 18th Citizens National Assembly. We mandated President Chamisa to write to the Speaker of Parliament and inform the Speaker, Honorable Mudenda, that we have acted in error, that the current person who wrote to you does not represent our movement. And the Speaker has given us a response that the issue has been subjected to the courts, and we await the court processes that are happening. Number two, we have, as a movement, opened a criminal case against the imposter of ZANU-PF, because we cannot watch when there's criminal abuse of our intellectual property, the criminal abuse of our logo, which ironically the symbol of our movement, which is the face of our president. But an imposter uses that letterhead to try and abuse our party, to try and abuse our property. That's why we've engaged the state, particularly the police. And we continue to urge the Zimbabwe Republic Police to take the necessary measures to make sure that such criminals, such criminal conduct is brought to book. You know, fellow Zimbabweans, that if it was the case of the opposite side, if any case had been opened against our member, you would see the energy, the extent, the harassment, the surveillance that would have happened if it was a member of the authentic alternative in this country, the Triple C. What does that indicate? It shows beyond doubt to all who care to listen that in this country we have a law for ZANU-PF and the law for the rest of us. That's why we have made sure that we engage the police for this act to be resolved. Because we are a law-abiding organization, we don't intend to take the law into our hands to deal with the current criminality and gross abuse of our intellectual properties. Thirdly, we have made sure that as a movement, we protest by disengaging from all sittings of Parliament, from all sittings of Council, as a way to record our displeasure, to ensure that our members of Parliament and councillors are reinstated into their respective offices. Because these people were voted for by the people. These people are representing Zimbabweans as they were voted in the election. Let me take this opportunity to put the general notice to all Zimbabweans, to all members of the media, to all change champions, to all state institutions, to all members of the region and the international community, that any correspondence that you receive coming from an imposter called Chabangu does not reflect the position of Triple C, and any correspondence that might be sent either to government, that might be sent either to the media, either to our citizens calling for any action or any program on behalf of Triple C does not reflect and represent Triple C. So we are putting citizens on this general notice and all the stakeholders of our movement. Now, I've spoken clearly about the issue of the recalls and the interventions that we have done. We have seen that citizens continue in respect of the second issue that I want to speak about, the SADC report. We have seen that SADC has produced its final report, and we are happy because the report of this SADC confirms what has been confirmed by Zimbabweans. After the election, we mandated our champion-in-chief, the president, to have a consultative forum across the country. And the universal consensus by all change champions and citizens across the country is that the election of the 23rd was flawed. It's not just a Triple C issue, it's a collective position by citizens. Citizens have affirmed how this election was grossly mismanaged by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, how the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission failed its constitutional duty to conduct a free, fair and credible election. That is what the South SADC has confirmed, the extent of voter suppression that happened, the partisan conduct of the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Services, the issue of violence in the countryside and in the urban areas, the issue of the ballot, the issue of the voters' roll, has all been confirmed by SADC to confirm that this election has been flawed. And we have proposed very clear as Triple C that the solution to make sure that we resolve the crisis in our country, which is the third issue that I'm going to speak about, which is the issue of dialogue. Many people have asked us this key question: how do we exit from the crisis that we're facing as a people? How do we rescue Zimbabwe from the vicious cycles of disputed elections? Since 1980, this country has been poisoned by vicious cycles of disputed election. Since 1980, that election was challenged in court. The election that followed after was challenged in court. The election that preceded after was challenged in court up to this very day. And how do we cure permanently the crisis of stolen election and discrete election in this country? We have made it very clear, and we make and reiterate this important national call, that Zimbabwe must dialogue to resolve the crisis in our country. Now, many people will try and attempt to say, you are choosing the path of dialogue, because we are very clear. We don't intend to govern this country over dead bodies. We don't intend to govern this country on account of lives lost because of politics. We are very clear that everything must be resolved. The major political entities in this country must be able to sit down. The major players in this country, the civic society, the church, students' unions, vendors, the black middle class, business people, must be able to sit down and say, what is the solution? Not a government of national unity, not sharing of positions, but to dialogue on the way forward to rescue Zimbabwe from this dark cloud of vicious cycles of disputed election. So we must be able to dialogue on the basis of how do we make sure that we correct the problems of how we hold elections in our country. It is in that respect that Triple C mandated our champion-in-chief, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, with the mandate to pursue this route to ensure that Zimbabweans are able to dialogue and resolve the crisis that is facing our country. Lastly, Triple C wants to confirm to all Zimbabweans that we continue with our political program. I'm sure you have seen that we have been to different parts of the country to make sure that we continue to organize, because Zimbabweans have a right, have a constitutional right to ensure that they express themselves to resolve the crisis of the stolen election, because that is the elephant in the room. The current administration, the current government in its composition has no mandate from the people, and Zimbabweans across continue to organize, and we are going to be, because it's not a partisan issue, it's not a Triple C issue. Zimbabweans have the Section 59 of the Zimbabwean Constitution, giving Zimbabweans the right to peacefully express themselves against the displeasure of what transpired on the 23rd of August 2023. Thank you very much.
sekamba, iva sekamba, utare semandu.